The word tough is often used to describe a difficult exam, a hard day at work, or maybe a physically demanding task. But when a top-tier lawyer like Barrister Aloy Ejimakor uses the word tough to describe a legal battle, you know there is a weight to it that goes far beyond the dictionary definition. We are looking at the aftermath of what is arguably the most controversial legal saga in Nigeria's recent history. The headline has been screaming across social media feeds since this morning, but we need to look closer at what was actually said. Aloy Ejimakor, the man who stood as the lead counsel for the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, has finally opened up about what went down behind the scenes leading up to that heart-wrenching judgment on November 20, 2025. He didn't just call it difficult, he called it tough. And coming from a man who has seen it all in the legal world, that admission sends a chill down the spine because it hints at the monumental forces that were stacked against them in that courtroom in Abuja. If you have been following this story, you know that the journey of Nnamdi Kanu did not just start in 2025. It has been a long, winding road of arrests, bail, invasions, extraordinary renditions, and detention. But today, Sunday, December 15, 2025, we are focusing on the specific revelation from Barrister Ejimakor regarding his stint as the head of the legal team. He took to his X handle, formerly Twitter, to post a video that is essentially a debrief, a report card, if you will, of the last 1 year. Remember, Ajimakor assumed the role of lead counsel in February 2024. At that time, hope was high. Supporters believed that a new legal strategy might finally crack the walls of the DSS detention facility. But as Ajimakor recounts, the field of play was anything but level. In this video that is currently making the rounds, Ajimakor was very clear. He said, "My stint as lead counsel was very fulfilling and I cannot complain. I trained to handle cases even when the cases are this tough, such as the case of Nnamdi Kanu." That sentence alone is loaded. It suggests that while he gave it his all, the system he was fighting against was designed to be impenetrable. He walked us through the first major step he took when he grabbed the steering wheel of the defense team in February 2024. The priority was simple: restore Nnamdi Kanu's bail. It sounds like a basic request, right? After all, bail is a constitutional right for many, and Kanu had enjoyed bail before. But this is where the toughness comes in. The legal team didn't just ask for bail out of thin air. They anchored their application on the very words of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. You see, the Supreme Court had previously washed its hands of the blame regarding Kanu's absence from court back in 2017. Ajimakor reminded everyone that the Supreme Court stated plump and plain that the revocation of Kanu's initial bail was unfair. The Apex Court had noted that the revocation smacked of suspicion of partiality. That is strong language from the highest court in the land. They essentially said the High Court was wrong to revoke the bail in the first place because Nnamdi Kanu did not jump bail in the traditional sense. He fled for his life. And why did he flee? Because of the military invasion of his home in September 2017. This is where the story gets really interesting, and it makes you wonder why the outcome in November 2025 was a life sentence. Ajimakor pointed out that there was a valid judgment from the High Court of Abia State in January 2022. That court didn't mince words. It condemned the invasion of Kanu's house and even awarded him 1 billion naira in damages. The court blamed that military operation as the sole reason Kanu had to leave Nigeria. So, if a High Court says you attacked him, that's why he left, and the Supreme Court says he didn't jump bail, the revocation was unfair, then logic dictates that his bail should have been restored in 2024. That was the argument Ajimakor took to court. He said, so for those reasons, a High Court should have taken the sound decision of revoking his bail, so I proceeded to file. But what happened? It was denied. Despite the Supreme Court's observations, despite the Abia High Court's judgment, the application was thrown out. Ajimakor didn't stop there. He appealed the denial to the Court of Appeal. This is the definition of tough. It is like pushing a boulder up a hill only for it to roll back down and then you have to push it up again. It's a test of endurance, not just for the lawyer, but for the man sitting in the dock, Nnamdi Kanu. The legal team then moved to step 2. Ejimakor disclosed that they needed to test if the judiciary was going to be fair at all. They challenged the jurisdiction of the court to subject Nnamdi Kanu to trial. The argument was that you cannot try a man who was extraordinarily renditioned. You can't kidnap someone from Kenya, bring them back illegally, and then put them through a legal process as if everything is normal. They raised judicial issues inherent in his case. They wanted to see if the court would uphold the rule of law or bow to the whims of the executive. And as we all know now, the court ruled that it had jurisdiction, paving the way for the trial that eventually led to the life sentence on November 20, 2025. This revelation from Ajimakor is crucial because it paints a picture of a legal defense that was proactive, grounded in law, and supported by superior court pronouncement, yet it still hit a brick wall. It explains why he calls the trial tough. It wasn't tough because the law was against them. It was tough because seemingly the outcome had been decided before the arguments were even made. The frustration in his recounting is palpable, even if he remains professional. He did what a lawyer is supposed to do. He used the instruments of the law to fight for his client. But when the instruments are blunted by the powers that be, the job becomes near impossible. Now, let's look at the aftermath. Following that tough trial, Nnamdi Kanu was handed a life sentence. Life, that is a heavy word. And immediately, he was whisked away to Sokoto Custodial Center. This transfer to Sokoto is another layer of the toughness. It removes him from his immediate family, his doctors, and yes, his legal team. Ajimakor's reflection on the past year is also a reflection on this final outcome. It forces us to ask, was there ever a chance for acquittal? If the Supreme Court's own words about the unfair revocation of bail were ignored, what hope did they have on the terrorism charges? I really want you guys to think about this. When a lawyer says a case was tough, he's often signaling that the battle was not just legal, but political. The reference to the extraordinary rendition from Kenya in 2021 is the elephant in the room that never left. The international community condemned it, legal experts condemned it, but in the end, the Nigerian court proceeded to convict him. It sets a precedent that is quite scary for human rights in this country. It suggests that how you bring a suspect to court doesn't matter as long as you get them there. Now, before I go deeper into the implications of this for the Southeast and the peace of the region, I want to take a quick second to ask you to please support what we are doing here. If you appreciate this breakdown and you want to keep getting the real story behind the headlines without the sugarcoating, please smash that like button right now. It helps the video spread to more people who need to know the truth. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Click that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. We are tracking every update on Nnamdi Kanu's stay in Sokoto and the next moves by his legal team. You don't want to miss it. Back to the story. Ajimakor's video is not just a lamentation, it's a historical record. He is putting it on record that we tried. He is telling the world we used the Supreme Court's words, we used the Abia High Court's judgment, we followed the process. This is important because in the future, when people ask, did his lawyers do enough, this video will be the answer. They did enough, but the system was rigid. The suspicion of partiality that the Supreme Court warned about seems to have hung over the case like a dark cloud until the very end. The transfer to Sokoto is particularly stinging for the supporters. Sokoto is far from Abuja and even farther from Umuahia. It isolates Kanu in a way that Kuje prison did not. It increases the cost of defense, the risk to the lawyers, and the psychological strain on Kanu himself. It's almost as if the toughness of the trial is being extended into his incarceration. We also have to consider what this means for the future. Ajimakor mentioned appealing the bail denial to the Court of Appeal. Now that the main conviction has happened, the battle shifts to the appellate courts again to challenge the life sentence. If the trial at the High Court was tough, the appeal will be a war. They will have to convince the Court of Appeal to overturn a terrorism conviction in a country where national security is often placed above individual rights. But if there's one thing we know about Aloy Ejimakor and the legal team, it is that they are resilient. They have taken punches for years and they are still standing. The mention of the field of play not being fair is a direct challenge to the integrity of the judiciary. It's a lawyer politely saying the referee was wearing the jersey of the opposing team.
When you challenge the jurisdiction of a court and the court ignores the fundamental flaw of how the suspect was brought to the country, it raises questions about the independence of that court. These are the judicial issues inherent in his case that Ejimakor spoke about. They are foundational issues. If the foundation is faulty, how can the building stand? Yet it stands in the form of a life sentence. For the common man on the streets of Onitsha or Aba, this legal grammar translates to one thing: injustice. They hear Supreme Court said he didn't jump bail, and they hear High Court convicted him, and it doesn't add up. It fuels the narrative that Nnamdi Kanu is being persecuted, not prosecuted. And that narrative is dangerous because it breeds resentment. The tough trial has produced a tough situation for peace in the region. As we wrap up this report, we must keep our eyes on the next phase. Will the legal team file an appeal against the life sentence immediately? How is Kanu coping in Sokoto? And will the international community, which has been relatively quiet lately, react to these revelations from his lawyer? The story of Nnamdi Kanu